In the quiet of a moonless night 2 nights ago, I found myself in a dream that felt more real than any waking moment. I stood in a vast, luminescent void, the air shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Before me, a figure, radiant and towering, his form both human and divine, cloaked in robes that seemed woven from starlight. He introduced himself as Aetherion, a deity of balance and exchange, his voice resonating like a melody that stirred my soul. Jasmine Wu, he said, my name echoing in the emptiness. I have watched your heart's devotion, your years of sacrifice for Nathan, the man you love, paralyzed these 5 years. I offer you a pact. Give me 30 years of your life, and I will restore your ability to walk. My heart raced. Nathan, my boyfriend of 6 years, had used a wheelchair since a car accident that I blamed myself for. He had driven over 100 kilometers to surprise me, only to crash from exhaustion, his spine shattered. The guilt had anchored me to his side, my life reshaped around his care. I had abandoned dreams of studying art abroad, learned massage therapy, and endured sleepless nights to ease his pain. Aetherion's offer was a beacon in the darkness of those years, a chance to see Nathan stand, to fulfill his whispered promises of marriage once he could walk again. Yet the cost was staggering. 30 years of my life, nearly half my expected span. Aetherion's eyes, deep as galaxies, held no deceit. The exchange is binding, he explained, but fair. A red thread will encircle your wrist, the symbol of our contract. You may revoke the pact for 7 days by cutting the thread with intent. Your years will return, but Nathan's healing will vanish, as if it never was. Choose now, for I do not linger. A scroll materialized before me, its parchment pulsing with light, inscribed with terms in a script both ancient and clear. The mechanics were precise. My vitality would fuel Nathan's recovery, a direct transfer of life's essence, and the thread's presence would remind me of the cost. I hesitated, my mind flickering to the consequences. 30 years meant aging prematurely, my body weakening like time had accelerated. I imagined my reflection, lines etching my face, my energy waning. But then I saw Nathan's face in my mind, his smile before the accident, the way he'd spin me in his arms, promising a future together. I thought of the past 5 years, the countless hospital visits, the scorn from friends who called me a fool, the slow softening of Nathan's mother, who once blamed me for his crash. All of it had been for him, for us. If he could walk, we could rebuild, marry, and live the life we'd dreamed of. The choice felt inevitable. I accept, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Aetherion nodded, and the scroll dissolved into a thin red thread that coiled around my left wrist, warm against my skin, a constant pulse like a second heartbeat. It is done, he intoned. When the thread fades, the exchange is complete. Use the 7 days wisely. The void dissolved, and I awoke, gasping, the thread still there, glowing faintly in the dawn light. I touched it, half expecting it to vanish, but it was real, a tangible reminder of my sacrifice. That morning, I rushed to Nathan's apartment, my heart pounding with hope. He was in his wheelchair, as always, but when I urged him to try standing, his legs twitched, then held. He rose, trembling, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Jasmine, I'm standing," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. I laughed through my tears, embracing him, believing this was the miracle we'd fought for. He thanked me, his words fervent, calling me his greatest gift. I felt no regret, only joy, convinced our future was now inevitable, a wedding, a home, a life rebuilt. But there was a shadow I couldn't ignore. In the mirror that evening, my reflection seemed subtly altered, my eyes dimmer, faint lines creasing my forehead. The thread's pulse was a warning. 30 years were no small price. I pushed the thought aside, focusing on Nathan's recovery. He spoke of a surprise, asking me to dress up for an event at a nearby villa. "It's for us," he said, his smile warm, and I believed him. I imagined a proposal, the culmination of our shared struggle. The thread on my wrist glowed brighter, as if affirming my choice. Yet beneath my hope, a whisper of doubt lingered. Aetherion's words echoed, "Use the 7 days wisely." I didn't know then that Nathan's heart had strayed, that the miracle I'd bought with my years would lead not to love, but to betrayal. As I prepared for the villa, choosing a dress and perfecting my makeup, I was unaware that the red thread was not just a symbol of sacrifice, but a lifeline, one I might soon need to sever. The red thread on my wrist pulsed faintly as I sat by Nathan's bedside, a reminder of the 30 years I'd traded to Aetherion to see him walk again. For 5 years, I had poured my heart into caring for him, my life reshaped by a single night that still haunted me. Nathan's accident was my fault, or so I believed. He had driven over 100 kilometers to surprise me, his voice crackling through the phone, brimming with excitement. "Jasmine, I've got something special for you," he'd said, refusing to spoil it. I should have stopped him, insisted he rest, but I didn't. Hours later, his mother's call shattered my world. Nathan had crashed, exhausted, his spine irreparably damaged. He'd never walk again. Guilt became my anchor. Nathan had been my rock, his affection unwavering before the accident. He'd write me letters, each a testament to his love, promising a future where we'd travel the world, my paintings in galleries, his arms around me. He'd say, "You're my muse, Jasmine," tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Even after the crash, when I first saw him in the hospital, pale and broken, he tried to comfort me. "Don't cry," he whispered, his hand weak in mine. "I was the one driving. This isn't on you." His words only deepened my resolve to stay, to make amends for the life I felt I'd stolen. I gave up everything. A full scholarship to an art university abroad, my dream of studying for a master's in Paris, vanished. Instead, I enrolled in online courses, teaching myself traditional massage therapy and acupressure to ease Nathan's pain. I studied nutrition, crafting meals to strengthen him, and scoured medical journals for experimental treatments. Every hospital visit, every specialist consultation, I was there, pushing his wheelchair, my hands steady despite the exhaustion. Friends drifted away, their voices sharp with judgment. "You're throwing your life away, Jasmine," they said. "He's a burden." I ignored them, clinging to Nathan's promises. "When I can walk again," he murmurs, "I'll marry you. I won't let you down." The toll was relentless. Sleepless nights left me hollow, my body aching from lifting Nathan, my hands calloused from endless massages. Though invisible to others, the red thread felt heavier each day, a subtle drain on my vitality. I noticed it in small ways. My stamina faltered, my once vibrant sketches lacked their old spark. In the mirror, my reflection hinted at the 30 years I'd pledged. Faint shadows under my eyes, a slight pallor. I hid it with makeup, telling myself it was temporary, that Nathan's recovery would make it worthwhile. His mother, who once spat venom at me, blaming me for the crash, began to soften. After months of my kneeling outside their home, begging to see him, she relented, eventually treating me like family. "You're good for him," she said, grudging but sincere. Nathan's affection sustained me through the darkest moments. On good days, he'd hold my hand, his eyes warm, recounting memories of our first date, a picnic under the stars, his laughter as we danced to a street musician's tune. He'd speak of our future, a house by the sea, my art on the walls. "You're my miracle," he said once, kissing my forehead. Those moments made the sacrifice bearable, convincing me that our love was real, that 5 years was a small price for a lifetime together. Yet there were cracks, times when Nathan grew distant, his smiles forced, his words clipped. I chalked it up to pain, to frustration, refusing to see the truth. An emotional one matched the physical cost of my care. I became a ghost of myself, my world shrinking to Nathan's needs. Social invitations stopped coming, my paintbrushes gathered dust. The isolation was suffocating, but I embraced it, believing I was building something sacred. Nathan's mother once found me crying in the kitchen, my hands trembling from fatigue. "You don't have to do this," she said, her tone softer than ever. "I'm not worth it," Nathan added later, his voice low. "You deserve better." I shook my head, adamant. "I chose this. I chose you." My heart soared when Nathan's legs twitched that morning, the first sign of Aetherion's pact at work. He stood, shaky but upright, and I saw the man I'd fallen in love with, strong, hopeful. He hugged me tightly, his tears soaking my shoulder. "You did this, Jasmine," he said. "I'm whole because of you." I believed him, ignoring the thread's faint burn on my wrist, the subtle ache in my bones. He spoke of a surprise, a gathering at a villa, and I let myself dream of a proposal, of a ring that would seal our years of struggle. The thread glowed brighter, as if affirming my faith, but a quiet unease stirred within me. I didn't know then that Nathan's heart had wandered, that the love I'd nurtured was no longer mine. The red thread on my wrist glimmered faintly in the morning light, a silent testament to the 30 years I'd traded to Aetherion to restore Nathan's legs. His recovery, just days old, felt like a miracle. Each step he took validated my 5 years of sacrifice. Nathan had stood before me, his arms around me, his voice thick with gratitude. "You've given me everything, Jasmine," he'd said, his eyes bright with the spark I'd loved since we met. That spark had carried us through the darkest moments, his accident, my guilt, the endless hospital visits. Now, it fueled my hope as he hinted at a surprise, a gathering at a villa in the suburbs. "Dress up, love," he'd said with a grin. "It's going to be special." My heart leapt. He meant the culmination of our shared dream. I spent the morning preparing, my excitement a welcome reprieve from years of exhaustion. In my cramped apartment, I sifted through my wardrobe, settling on a sapphire dress that Nathan once said made my eyes shine. I hadn't worn it since before the accident, when we'd dance under streetlights, his laughter echoing in my ears. The memory warmed me, reminding me why I'd stayed. Nathan's affection had been my anchor. His letters, tucked in a drawer, spoke of a future where my art would light up galleries, where we'd build a life together. Even in his darkest moments, paralyzed and in pain, he'd trace my hand with his thumb, promising, "When I can walk, I'll make you my wife." I believed him, the red thread's pulse a quiet affirmation of my choice. As I applied my makeup, my reflection caught me off guard. The mirror showed subtle signs of Aetherion's pact, faint lines at my eyes, a slight pallor beneath my skin. The 30 years I'd given weren't just a number. They were etched into me, a weight I felt in my bones. I brushed it aside, focusing on the night ahead. Nathan's recovery had rekindled my dreams, not just of marriage, but of art. I'd sketched in stolen moments during those 5 years, my hands smudged with charcoal as I poured my pain into lines and shadows. Hidden in a portfolio, those sketches were my lifeline, a promise I'd return to my craft. Tonight, I imagined Nathan proposing, his ring a bridge to a future where I could paint again, free from guilt. I drove to the villa, the suburbs unfolding in a blur of greenery and twilight. The thread on my wrist seemed to hum, as if sensing the night's significance. Nathan had been secretive, his texts playful but vague. "You'll love it," he'd written, and I pictured him on one knee, our friends around us, celebrating our love. The thought made me smile, a rare lightness after years of strain. I'd given up so much, my scholarship to an art university in Paris, my social life, my health. But Nathan's love had made it worthwhile. His recovery proved that our bond could overcome anything, or so I thought. Pulling up to the villa, I saw cars lining the drive, familiar ones belonging to classmates and friends who'd once been close but had faded as I devoted myself to Nathan. Their presence thrilled me. Nathan must have planned something grand to include them. As I stepped out, adjusting my dress, I heard voices drifting from inside. Excited chatter, laughter, phrases like "say yes," and "they're perfect together." My heart swelled, interpreting their words as a rehearsal for our moment. I imagined Nathan inside, nervous but resolute, ready to honor the promises he'd made over 5 years. The villa's lights glowed warmly, beckoning me toward what I believed was my future. I paused at the entrance, smoothing my hair, the red thread catching the light. For a moment, doubt flickered. Nathan's occasional distance in recent months, his guarded looks when I mentioned marriage. But I dismissed it, clinging to his recent warmth, his gratitude for my care. He'd stood because of me and the love I'd poured into him. This night, I was sure, would seal that love forever. I took a deep breath, my fingers brushing the thread, and stepped inside, ready to say I do to the man I'd given everything for. Unbeknownst to me, the voices I heard weren't for me but for another, and the surprise Nathan planned would shatter my world in ways I couldn't yet fathom. The villa's main hall glowed with soft light, the air thick with anticipation as I stepped inside, my sapphire dress catching the flicker of chandeliers. The red thread on my wrist pulsed, a silent reminder of the 30 years I'd traded to Aetherion to restore Nathan's legs. I'd arrived expecting a proposal, my heart full of the promises Nathan had made over 5 years, promises of love, marriage, and a future built on our shared struggle. The voices of friends and classmates, Their excited murmurs of, "Say yes," and "they're meant to be," had fueled my hope. But as I crossed the threshold, the scene before me stopped me cold, as if the world had tilted off its axis. Nathan was there in the center of the room, kneeling on one knee, his back to me. He was no longer the man in a wheelchair I'd cared for, but the strong, vibrant Nathan I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago, when he'd spin me under starlit skies and write me letters filled with dreams. Now he held a ring, his voice trembling with emotion, but the name he spoke wasn't mine. "Emily," he said, "my love for you never faded. I stayed away because I couldn't bear to burden you with my paralysis. Every second of these 5 years I dreamed of standing again, of giving you the life you deserve. Heaven answered my prayers. Emily, will you marry me?" Emily, his first love, stood before him, radiant in a cream gown, her smile sharp and triumphant. She glanced at me, her eyes glinting with a smugness that cut deeper than words. I knew her, Emily, the minor internet celebrity who'd left Nathan after his accident, unwilling to care for him. She'd reappeared months ago, drawn by his recovery and the chance to spin a miracle love story for her followers. Her presence had puzzled me, but Nathan had dismissed my concerns, calling her a friend. Her smirk told a different story. She'd been waiting, plotting, ready to reclaim what she believed was hers. The room seemed to shrink, and the crowd's cheers were a distant roar. My legs trembled, but I stood frozen, the red thread burning against my skin. Emily's voice broke the haze. "I will," she said, her tone sweet but laced with mockery as she accepted Nathan's ring. The guests erupted, clapping, some wiping tears, oblivious to me standing in the shadows. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my throat closed, the weight of 5 years, sleepless nights, abandoned dreams, my health drained by Aetherian's Pact, crashing down. Nathan had been my everything, his affection my lifeline. His letters, his whispered promises of marriage, had sustained me. How could he kneel for her, erasing me so completely? Nathan turned, finally noticing me. His eyes, once warm with gratitude, were cold and unapologetic. No guilt, no remorse. Only a faint sneer, as if my presence was an inconvenience. Emily stepped closer to him, her arm looping through his, her gaze taunting. "Oh, Jasmine," she said, her voice dripping with false pity, "you must be so shocked." The crowd hushed, some turning to look at me, their expressions a mix of pity and amusement. A few whispered, but their words were lost in my pulse pounding. I felt exposed, as if my heart had been laid bare for their entertainment. I took a step forward, my voice shaking but resolute. "Nathan, what is this?" The question was futile. The truth was clear, but I needed to hear it from him. He stood, brushing off his knee, and faced me with a dismissive shrug. "Exactly what it looks like, Jasmine. Emily and I are engaged. You didn't think we were real, did you?" His words were a blade, each one slicing through the memories of his tenderness, the nights he'd thanked me, called me his miracle. Emily laughed softly, leaning into him. "You did so much for him, Jasmine. I should thank you. Without you, he wouldn't be standing here, proposing to me." The betrayal wasn't just Nathan's, it was Emily's too. She'd always resented me, her jealousy simmering even in college when Nathan chose me over her. Now, she'd seized her chance, using his recovery to rewrite their story, casting me as the selfless caretaker, not the woman he loved. The red thread seemed to tighten, a physical ache mirroring the one in my chest. I'd given 30 years of my life, felt the toll in my weary body, my fading vibrancy. For this? To be discarded, mocked, in front of those I'd once called friends? I didn't cry. Not then. I straightened, meeting Nathan's gaze, then Emily's. The crowd's whispers faded. Their judgment meant nothing. The thread on my wrist glowed faintly, a reminder of Aetherion's 7-day clause. I could undo this, cut the thread, reclaim my years, and let Nathan fall. The thought was a spark, not of vengeance, but of clarity. I'd given everything for love, but love hadn't been returned. As I turned to leave, Nathan's voice called after me, sharp and careless. "Don't make a scene, Jasmine." I didn't look back, my steps steady, the thread's pulse a promise of power I wasn't yet ready to wield. The villa's lights seemed to dim as I stood frozen, the red thread on my wrist pulsing like a warning. Nathan's proposal to Emily, his first love, had shattered my world, his cold dismissal. "You didn't think we were real, did you?" echoing in my mind. Emily's smug acceptance, her taunting glance cut deeper than Nathan's betrayal. She wasn't just a bystander, she was the architect of this moment. Her presence a calculated strike against the 5 years I'd poured into Nathan. As the crowd's cheers faded into a low hum, I saw her clearly, not as the radiant victor she played, but as a woman driven by envy and ambition, her motives rooted in a past I'd tried to forget. Emily and I had known each other since college, her charm and confidence drawing attention like moths to a flame. She'd been Nathan's girlfriend then, their relationship a whirlwind of public displays, kisses in the quad, her laughter loud at parties. But I'd caught Nathan's eye, my quiet passion for art a contrast to her flash. Emily's smile never wavered when he chose me, but her eyes turned cold. "You're sweet, Jasmine," she'd said, her tone laced with condescension. "Nathan needs someone stable." I hadn't seen the jab, too enamored with Nathan's affection, his letters, his promises of a future where my paintings would hang in galleries. Emily vanished from our lives, or so I thought, leaving for a career as a minor internet celebrity, her social media filled with curated perfection. Nathan's accident changed everything. 5 years ago, he'd driven 100 kilometers to surprise me only to crash, his spine shattered. I'd given up my art scholarship abroad, learned massage therapy, and devoted myself to his care, guilt, and love intertwining. Emily, I learned later, had visited him once in the hospital, her face pale as she saw his wheelchair. "I can't do this," she'd told him, her voice firm, and left, unwilling to tether her rising star to a paralyzed man. Nathan never spoke of her, his gratitude for my care, his soft, "You're my miracle, Jasmine," convincing me our love was unshakable. But Emily had been watching, waiting, her ambition sharper than her heart. Months before Nathan's recovery, Emily had re-entered his life. Her messages were initially subtle, a checking-in text and a nostalgic photo from college. Frustrated by his condition, Nathan responded, their conversations growing frequent. I'd noticed his phone lighting up, her name flashing, but he'd brushed it off. "She's just a friend, Jasmine," he'd said, his smile tight. I trusted him, blind to the truth. Emily saw his potential recovery as a story to boost her brand. A miracle love narrative, her caring for him, their reunion defying odds, would skyrocket her followers, maybe land sponsorships. My role, she decided, was the disposable caretaker, my 5 years of sacrifice a footnote she'd erase. Her cream gown shimmering in the villa, Emily's smirk revealed her triumph. She'd orchestrated this proposal, knowing I'd be there, her public humiliation of me a deliberate act. She'd always resented my place in Nathan's heart, believing she deserved him with her beauty and charisma. Now, with Nathan standing, thanks to my pact with Aetherion, she'd reclaimed him, her jealousy cloaked in gratitude. "Jasmine, you've been so generous," she said, her voice saccharine, the word generous a dagger. She leaned into Nathan, her arm possessive, as if marking her territory. The crowd, unaware of her absence during Nathan's paralysis, ate it up, a few murmuring praise for her grace. I saw her motives now. Emily hadn't returned for love but power. Nathan's recovery was her ticket to relevance. My devotion, the stepping stone she'd trample. The red thread burned against my wrist, a reminder of the 30 years I'd traded, years that had left me weaker, my reflection subtly aged. I'd felt the Pact's toll in my aching joints, my dimmed energy, all for Nathan, who now stood for her. Emily's plan relied on my silence, my heartbreak keeping me in the shadows, but the thread's pulse whispered of choice, of Aetherion's 7-day clause. I could cut it, undo Nathan's recovery, and reclaim my life. As Emily's laughter rang out, Nathan's hand in hers, I felt no tears, only a cold resolve. She thought she'd won, rewriting our story to cast herself as the heroine. But she didn't know about Aetherion, about the thread tying Nathan's legs to my sacrifice. The crowd's eyes lingered on me, some with pity, others with amusement, but I ignored them. Emily's motives, laid bare, only sharpened my clarity. I turned, my steps steady, her voice fading behind me. "Don't be dramatic, Jasmine," she called, but I didn't look back. The thread glowed, a beacon of power, and I knew this wasn't the end, just the beginning of her unraveling. The villa's main hall pulsed with the afterglow of Nathan's proposal to Emily, their clasped hands a stark symbol of my erasure. The red thread on my wrist burned. a reminder of the 30 years I'd traded to Aetherion to make Nathan walk again, years that had left my body subtly weakened, my reflection hinting at premature age. I stood, surrounded by friends and classmates who'd once shared my laughter, now spectators to my humiliation. Their cheers for Nathan and Emily had faded into murmurs, some pitying, others mocking, as Emily's smug voice lingered. "Jasmine, you've been so generous." Nathan's cold sneer, "You didn't think we were real, did you?" cut deeper than the crowd's gaze. But I wasn't broken, not yet. I stepped forward, my sapphire dress catching the light, my voice steady despite the storm within. "Nathan, 5 years, I gave up everything, my dreams, health, and life, for you. You promised marriage when you could walk. Was it all a lie?" The room hushed, eyes darting between us. Nathan straightened, his recovered legs mocking my sacrifice, and laughed, sharp and cruel. "A lie? Jasmine, you were a caretaker, nothing more. Emily's my true love. You saw me at my worst, pathetic, helpless. How could I love you after that?" His words were a blade, slicing through memories of his affection, his letters, his whispered, "You're my miracle," during long hospital nights. Radiantly in her cream gown, Emily leaned into him, her smile calculated. She'd orchestrated this moment, her return to Nathan's life, as a power play to boost her influencer status. In college, she'd resented me for winning Nathan's heart, and now she reveled in rewriting our story, casting me as the selfless servant, herself the heroine. "Oh," Jasmine said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "Gratitude doesn't mean he owes you a ring. You did a good job, though. Really." A few guests chuckled, emboldened by her confidence, but others shifted uncomfortably, their faces flickering with doubt. These were people who'd seen my devotion, classmates who'd visited Nathan early on, friends who'd watched me fade into his shadow. Their silence stung, but I held my ground. I turned to Emily, my gaze unflinching. "And you, Emily? Where were you when he couldn't move, when I learned massage therapy, when I carried him through every hospital visit? You left him the moment he needed you." Her smile faltered just for a second before she recovered, tossing her hair. "I was building a life, Jasmine. Not everyone can play martyr. Besides, Nathan chose me." The crowd's murmurs grew, some nodding in her favor, but a few, old friends like Sarah, who'd once urged me to leave Nathan, looked away, guilt in their eyes. I realized then that not everyone was fooled by Emily's act, but their support came too late. Nathan stepped forward, pulling a bank card from his pocket. "Let's not drag this out," he said, his voice bored. 5 years, $3,000 a month. That's $180,000. I'll make it $200,000, payment for your services. We're done now." He handed the card to Emily, who extended it to me with a smirk, as if daring me to refuse. The crowd whispered, some calling me greedy under their breath, but I saw the trap. Refusing would paint me as noble but weak. Accepting would brand me mercenary. I chose strength. I snatched the card, my smile cold. "Thanks," I said, my voice clear. "I earned it." Emily's smirk wavered, surprised by my defiance. Nathan scoffed, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some, like Sarah, nodded slightly, respecting my choice. Others muttered, "She's just in it for the money." I didn't care. The red thread pulsed, Aetherion's 7-day claws a secret weapon they couldn't fathom. I'd given 30 years for Nathan, felt the toll in my weary body, my dimmed spirit. This card, this moment, was my first step toward reclaiming myself. Emily tried to regain control, her voice sharp. "Well, that settles it. You got what you wanted, Jasmine. Time to go." I met her gaze, then Nathan's, my resolve hardening. "You think this is over? Enjoy your moment, both of you." I turned, my steps deliberate, ignoring the scattered jeers and the few sympathetic glances from old friends. Sarah stepped toward me, her hand outstretched, but I shook my head. I didn't need their pity now. The thread glowed faintly, a promise of power. Nathan and Emily thought they'd won, but they didn't know the divine pact that held Nathan's recovery or how easily I could undo it. As I left the villa, the night air was cool against my skin. I felt not defeated, but rather the stirrings of vengeance, quiet and fierce. The night air was cool as I stepped out of the villa, the echo of Nathan and Emily's laughter fading behind me. The red thread on my wrist glowed faintly, its pulse a steady reminder of the 30 years I'd traded to Aetherion to restore Nathan's legs. The confrontation had left me raw. Nathan's cruel dismissal, "You were a caretaker, nothing more," and Emily's smug taunts, "Gratitude. Gratitude doesn't mean he owes you a ring," had stripped away the illusion of our love. The $200,000 bank card in my purse felt like a victory and a wound, proof of my worth reduced to a transaction. As I slid into my car, the weight of 5 years of sacrifice crashed over me, but the thread's burn anchored my resolve. I drove aimlessly, the suburbs blurring past, my mind replaying the betrayal. For 5 years, I'd given everything to Nathan, my art scholarship abroad, my social life, my health, driven by guilt over his accident and the love I thought we shared. His affection had been my lifeline, the letters he wrote, promising a future with my paintings and galleries, the nights he'd held my hand, calling me his miracle. But tonight, he'd knelt for Emily, his first love, erasing me in front of our friends. The red thread, Aetherion's mark, seemed to tighten, its warmth starkly contrasting to the chill in my chest. The deity's terms were clear. I had 7 days to cut the thread, reclaim my 30 years, and undo Nathan's recovery. The choice loomed, heavy and inevitable. I pulled over, the car's engine humming softly, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The Pact's toll was visible. Faint lines etched my face, my eyes dimmer, my skin paler, as if time had already claimed a piece of me. The 30 years weren't abstract. They were a physical drain, my body weaker, my stamina faltering. I'd felt it in the ache of my joints, the fatigue that lingered despite rest. I'd traded half my life for Nathan, believing he'd cherish me, that we'd build a future together. Now, that future was ash, and the thread's pulse was a question. Could I let go of the man I'd loved, knowing it would destroy him? Aetherion's voice echoed from the dream where I'd signed the pact. "The exchange is binding, but reversible within 7 days," he'd said, his eyes like galaxies. "Cut the thread with intent, and your vitality returns, but his healing vanishes." The mechanics were precise. My life's essence fueled Nathan's legs, a divine transfer sealed by the thread. Cutting it would restore me, but Nathan would collapse, his paralysis returning as if the miracle had never happened. I dismissed the clause then, particularly that Nathan's love was worth any cost. Now, his betrayal made the thread a lifeline, not a chain. I opened the glove compartment, my fingers brushing a small pair of scissors I kept for emergencies. The thread glowed brighter, as if sensing my intent. I thought of the past 5 years, the sleepless nights, the hospital visits, the friends who'd called me foolish. I'd learned massage therapy, studied nutrition, and carried Nathan's weight, both physical and emotional, while my dreams withered. The art I'd once lived for had been reduced to stolen sketches, my portfolio gathering dust. The 30 years I'd given had stolen more than time. They'd dimmed the spark that made me Jasmine. Nathan's proposal to Emily wasn't just a betrayal of love, but of the self I'd sacrificed. I held the scissors, the thread taut against my wrist. Cutting it wasn't vengeance, it was justice. Nathan had used me, his gratitude a lie to keep me bound. Emily, with her calculated return, had orchestrated my humiliation, her influencer ambitions thriving on my erasure. They thought they'd won, their future bright with Nathan's recovery, my gift to him. But the thread gave me power they couldn't imagine. I closed my eyes, Aetherion's words resurfacing, "Use the 7 days wisely." I'd been wise enough to love, to sacrifice. Now I'd be wise enough to let go. With a steady hand, I cut the thread. It snapped, dissolving into a shimmer of light, and a rush of warmth flooded me, as if years were pouring back into my veins. My reflection in the mirror seemed sharper, the lines softer, my eyes brighter. Aetherion's voice whispered, faint but unmistakable, "The pact is undone." I exhaled, a weight lifted, not just from my body but from my soul. Nathan's legs, I knew, would fail him soon, the miracle erased. I felt no guilt, only clarity. The man I'd loved was replaced by a stranger who'd mocked my devotion. Emily's triumph would crumble, her story built on lies. I started the car, the road ahead stretching into the night. The $200,000 was a start, a means to reclaim my dreams, perhaps the art university I'd abandoned. The thread was gone, but its lesson remained. My worth wasn't tied to Nathan's love, or anyone's. As I drove, a quiet strength grew within me, born not of anger, but of freedom. Nathan and Emily would face their reckoning, unaware of the divine force I'd unleashed. For the first time in 5 years, I was no longer a caretaker, but a woman ready to live for herself. The night I cut the red thread, severing Aetherion's pact, a quiet power settled within me. The 30 years I'd traded to restore Nathan's legs were mine again, the subtle aging of my face, faint lines, dimmed eyes, fading as vitality returned. Aetherion's mechanics were precise. My life's essence had fueled Nathan's recovery, and by cutting the thread, I'd undone the miracle, condemning him to paralysis once more. I felt no remorse, only liberation, as I drove away from the villa where Nathan had proposed to Emily, his first love, erasing my 5 years of sacrifice. The $200,000 he'd given me, payment for my services, was a bitter prize, but it fueled my resolve to reclaim my life. Days later, Nathan and Emily, now married, appeared on a popular relationship-focused live stream, their union a local sensation. Emily, the influencer who'd re-entered Nathan's life to capitalize on his recovery, had spun a false narrative. She'd cared for him through his paralysis, her love sparking the miracle of his legs. I watched the stream from my apartment, the bank card on my table, and a smirk on my lips. Emily's ambition was clear. She'd orchestrated the proposal to humiliate me, her college rival, and boost her brand with a heartwarming story. Nathan, complicit, had let her rewrite our history, casting me as a stranger. But Aetherion's undone pact was about to unravel their lie. On the screen, Nathan and Emily sat on a plush sofa, her cream dress echoing the one from the villa, his smile strained but practiced. The host, teary-eyed, gushed, "Your love is a miracle. Emily, you never gave up on Nathan, caring for him for 5 years." The chat exploded with heart emojis, viewers buying the tale. Emily squeezed Nathan's hand, her voice soft. "It's what love does. 5 years, 10, 20, I'd never leave him." Nathan nodded, dabbing his eyes, but I saw the tension in his jaw. He knew the truth. I'd been the one at his side, learning massage therapy, enduring sleepless nights, while Emily had fled after his accident. The host turned to Nathan, beaming. "Mr. White, you dreamed of lifting Emily in your arms again. For our finale, will you stand and hug her?" The chat buzzed with anticipation. Nathan hesitated, then planted his hands on the sofa, pushing to rise. His face contorted, legs buckling beneath him. "I can't feel my legs," he gasped, collapsing back, his voice rising in panic. "I can't feel anything." The studio fell silent, the host frozen, the chat erupting in confusion. Emily laughed awkwardly, thinking it an act. "Nathan, stop joking. We had a checkup yesterday. Your legs are fine." She knelt, massaging his legs clumsily, her technique a mockery of the therapy I'd mastered. The chat turned skeptical. "That's not a massage," one viewer wrote. "She said she cared for him. Where's the skill?" Others questioned the miracle, sensing cracks in their story. Emily's smile faltered, but she pressed on, her voice syrupy. "Maybe he sat too long." "Let me show you how I've cared for him." Nathan shoved her away, his panic real. "Get off me." "I'm not joking. I can't move." He fumbled for his phone, shouting, "Where's Jasmine? She'll know what's wrong." My name on his lips was a jolt, a reminder of my power. The host stammered, trying to salvage the moment. But Nathan's outburst, "Shut up. I said I can't feel my legs," sent the stream into chaos. The broadcast cut abruptly, the screen going black. My phone buzzed almost instantly, Nathan's number flashing. I let it ring, then answered on the third call, my voice calm. "What do you want, Nathan?" His tone was frantic, and all trace of the villa's arrogance was gone. "Jasmine, my legs, they're numb again. The doctors don't know why. You know my condition best. Please come to the hospital. Tell them how you did the massages." I leaned back, the thread's absence a quiet victory. Aetherion's claws had worked. Nathan's recovery, tied to my sacrifice, was gone. He'd betrayed me, chosen Emily, but now he needed me, unaware I'd orchestrated his fall. I could have ignored him, let him flounder, but curiosity, or perhaps a flicker of spite, drew me in. "Send me the address," I said, hanging up. Emily's lie, built on my erasure, was crumbling, her influencer dreams teetering. She'd returned to Nathan not for love, but for fame, her jealousy of me fueling her public triumph. Now, her clumsy massage and Nathan's collapse had exposed her. The chat's doubts were just the start. The truth, I knew, would spread. As I grabbed my keys, the $200,000 card caught my eye, a tool to rebuild my art career, abandoned for Nathan. The hospital awaited, not for his salvation, but for my reckoning. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed as I stepped into Nathan's room, the antiseptic smell a sharp reminder of the 5 years I'd spent in places like this, caring for him. The red thread was gone, cut to undo Aetherian's pact, reclaiming the 30 years I'd traded for Nathan's legs. His collapse on the live stream, legs failing, panic overtaking him, had been my doing, the divine miracle erased. Now, he lay in a hospital bed, his face pale, as doctors, police, and a furious Emily surrounded him. My phone had buzzed relentlessly with Nathan's pleas. "You know my condition best, Jasmine. Please help me." I'd come, not to save him, but to witness the chaos of his unraveling. Emily spotted me first, her cream dress swapped for a sleek blazer, her influencer poise barely masking her rage. She'd returned to Nathan's life to exploit his recovery, her jealousy of me dating back to college when Nathan chose me, driving her to erase my role in his story. On the live stream, she'd claimed she'd cared for him, but her clumsy massage had exposed her lies, the chat turning skeptical. Now, she pointed at me, her voice shrill. "Officers, it's her, Jasmine Wu. She poisoned Nathan out of spite because she couldn't handle losing him." Nathan's mother, eyes red, nodded fiercely. "She made him paralyzed again." Nathan, propped up in bed, looked at me with desperation and suspicion. "It makes sense, Jasmine. You didn't fight when I proposed to Emily, and you didn't react when we got married. Someone who loved me like you did. Why stay so calm unless you planned this?" Their accusations were wild, a screenplay born of guilt and fear. Emily's ambition had crafted a narrative where she was the devoted heroine, but Nathan's relapse threatened her brand. Blaming me was her desperate bid to salvage it. The police, 2 officers with notepads, looked skeptical but attentive. "Do you have evidence?" one asked. Emily's smirk was venomous. The day after Nathan recovered, I took him for a checkup. The doctor said his legs were perfect. Now he's paralyzed again. Coincidence? She poisoned him. "Run a toxicology screen and you'll find it." Nathan's mother chimed in. "She caused his accident 5 years ago, made him drive that night. She's been hurting him all along." The accusations stung, but I stood calm, the absence of the thread a quiet strength. Aetherion's mechanics were beyond their grasp. No poison, no medical explanation could account for Nathan's relapse. I'd undone a divine pact, not a chemical one. I crossed my arms, meeting Emily's gaze. "Go ahead, test him. Right now, in front of everyone." My confidence unnerved her. Her eyes flickered to Nathan, who nodded weakly. The doctors, already puzzled by his condition, agreed. One said his tests match his records from 5 years ago, reviewing charts. No change in his spinal damage, as if he had never walked. They drew blood, ran scans, and tested for toxins, the room tense with anticipation. Emily paced, her facade cracking, while Nathan's mother clutched his hand, whispering prayers. The officers watched me, but I sat on a nearby couch, unfazed. The results came back. No poison, no anomalies, just the same spinal injury that had always been. The lead doctor shook his head. "There's no evidence of tampering. His condition is consistent with his original diagnosis." Emily's face fell, her accusation crumbling. "That's impossible," she snapped. "He was fine." The officer sighed. "Without evidence, we can't proceed." I stood, my voice steady. "You're done, Emily. You built your story on lies, and now it's falling apart." Her eyes blazed, but she had no retort. The truth was clear. I was innocent, and their narrative was fiction. Nathan's voice broke the silence, hoarse. "Jasmine, please, tell them about the massages. They worked before. Help me." His desperation was pitiful, a far cry from the man who'd sneered at me in the villa. I stepped closer, my smile cold. "You have a wife, Nathan. Let Emily take care of you. She said she'd do it for 20 years, right?" Emily flinched, her influencer charm useless now. I turned to leave, but Nathan's mother grabbed my arm. "You owe him, Jasmine." I pulled free. "I owe no one." As I walked out, I passed Sarah, a college friend at the villa, her face etched with guilt. "Jasmine, I'm sorry," she said. "We should have stood up for you." Other mutual friends had texted apologies after the live stream, shamed by Nathan's collapse and Emily's exposed lies. I nodded but kept walking. Their regret couldn't undo the past. The hospital doors closed behind me, and I felt lighter. The $200,000 in my purse was a key to my future, art school, and my dreams were reborn. Emily's ambition and Nathan's betrayal had led them here, but I was free, ready to face whatever came next. The morning sun cast long shadows as I stepped out of my apartment, my suitcase packed for a new beginning. The $200,000 Nathan had given me, meant to dismiss my 5 years of care, was now my ticket to the art university abroad I'd once abandoned for him. The red thread was gone, cut to undo Aetherion's pact, reclaiming the 30 years I'd traded to restore Nathan's legs. Its absence left me lighter, the subtle aging it had caused, faint lines, dimmed vitality, receding like a bad dream. But as I approached the gate, a familiar car blocked my path. Nathan's mother rushed toward me, her face haggard, with Nathan in the passenger seat, his eyes sunken, a shadow of the man who'd betrayed me. "Jasmine, please," his mother begged, her voice cracking. "We've been waiting. I didn't mean those things at the hospital, accusing you of poisoning him. I was scared. You've always been like a daughter to me." Her words, once a rare comfort during my years of caregiving, now rang hollow. Nathan leaned forward, his voice hoarse. "Jasmine, I'm divorcing Emily. She left me when my legs failed again. I know I was cruel, but I want you back. You're the one I love." He held up a ring he'd given Emily at the villa. Its sparkle mocked my pain. I laughed, sharp and cold, the sound startling them. The hospital's false accusations, Emily's claim I'd poisoned Nathan, his mother's insistence I'd caused his accident, had collapsed under medical scrutiny. Nathan's relapse, inexplicable to doctors, was my doing, the divine pact undone. Aetherian's mechanics were precise. My 30 years had fueled Nathan's recovery, and cutting the thread had reversed it, his paralysis returning as if the miracle never existed. They didn't know this, but their desperation suggested they sensed something beyond science at play. Nathan's mother clutched my arm. "Please talk to him. He hasn't eaten or slept. He needs you." I pulled free, my gaze shifting to Nathan. "You think I'm your fallback now that Emily's gone?" "You said looking at me made you sick, Nathan. Why beg for the villain when you married the good woman?" His face twisted, frustration mingling with shame. "Jasmine, I was wrong. Emily's nothing like I thought. She's demanding half my assets in the divorce. You're different. You're home." His words echoed the promises of old, his letters, his whispered marriage vows, but they were empty now, a manipulator's plea. I stepped closer, my voice steady. "You want to know why your legs failed, Nathan? It wasn't poison or medicine, it was me." Their eyes widened, but I pressed on, the truth a weapon I'd held too long. "I made a deal with a deity named Aetherion. I traded 30 years of my life to make you walk. That's why you stood, because I gave up half my future. The red thread on my wrist was the pact, and I could cut it within 7 days to take it back. After you proposed to Emily, I did. That's why you're paralyzed again." Nathan's jaw dropped, his mother gasping, but they didn't scoff. The medical impossibility of his recovery and relapse made my story plausible. Aetherion's pact had defied logic, and they'd seen its effects. "You gave 30 years?" Nathan stammered, his voice small. "Why didn't you tell me?" I smiled, bitter. "Would it have changed anything? You chose Emily, mocked my sacrifice. Those years took a toll, my body weakened, my energy faded. I felt them slipping away, all for you. And you threw it in my face." His mother's eyes brimmed with tears, but her following words chilled me. "Jasmine, please do it again. Trade for more years. Nathan's young. He deserves to walk. 30 years is nothing compared to his happiness." Nathan nodded eagerly. "Yes, Jasmine, I swear this time I'll stay. I'll love only you." Their entitlement was staggering, as if my life were theirs to barter. I shook my head, my resolve ironclad. "Not 30 years, not 30 seconds. I've given enough." "But you," I turned to his mother, "if you're so eager, trade your years. I can call Aetherion for you." Nathan's eyes lit up, grasping at hope. "Mom, please. You always said you wanted me to be happy. Being stuck in this bed is worse than death." His mother recoiled, her face paling. "I'm old, Nathan. 30 years would kill me tomorrow." "I can't." She clamped a hand over her mouth, realizing her hypocrisy. I whispered, "Hypocrite," and stepped back. Nathan's desperation turned to anger, but he said nothing, his mother's refusal a mirror of his selfishness. I walked away, their voices fading. Nathan's pleas, his mother's excuses. The suitcase in my hand felt like freedom. the $200,000 a bridge to my art dreams. Aetherian's pact had cost me dearly, but it had taught me my worth. Nathan and Emily's world was crumbling, while mine was beginning. As I boarded my flight, the hospital's accusations and the villa's betrayal felt distant. I was no longer the caretaker, but Jasmine Wu, ready to paint her future. The airport's hum faded as I boarded my flight. The $200,000 from Nathan, a lifeline to the art university abroad I'd forsaken 5 years ago. The confrontation at my apartment, Nathan's desperate plea, his mother's hypocrisy, lingered. But I felt unburdened, the red thread's absence symbolizing my reclaimed freedom. I'd revealed the truth about Aetherion's pact, how I'd traded 30 years for Nathan's legs and undone it after his betrayal with Emily. Their stunned faces, grappling with the divine reality, marked the end of my obligation. As the plane ascended, I left behind the wreckage of their world, my focus on the future. Nathan and Emily's downfall unfolded swiftly, their lies exposed by the live stream that had showcased Nathan's collapse. Emily, the influencer who'd re-entered Nathan's life to exploit his recovery, had built her brand on a fabricated tale. She'd cared for him through his paralysis, her love fueling his miracle. In college, her jealousy of me, when Nathan chose my quiet passion over her charisma, had festered, culminating in her orchestrated humiliation of me at the villa. But the live stream, meant to cement her narrative, backfired. Nathan's paralysis returned, my cut thread erasing Aetherion's gift, and Emily's clumsy massage revealed her as a fraud. Mutual acquaintances, once complicit in my humiliation at the villa, began to shift. Sarah, a college friend who'd whispered apologies at the hospital, texted me, "Jasmine, we were wrong to stay silent." Emily's story never added up. Others followed, classmates who'd cheered Nathan's proposal, now ashamed after the live stream's chaos. Their messages piled up, offering regret and praise for my resilience, but I didn't respond. Their support, though genuine, couldn't erase the sting of their earlier betrayal. I'd learned to rely on myself, the $200,000 a testament to my endurance, not their belated loyalty. Nathan, desperate to salvage his reputation, went live again, his face gaunt and wheelchair integrated, starkly contrasting to his villa bravado. "Jasmine cared for me those 5 years, not Emily," he confessed, his voice breaking. "The press releases, the stories, they were Emily's idea. I was wrong to let her erase Jasmine." The admission went viral, viewers stunned by his candor. Emily, furious, retaliated on her stream, her polished facade cracking. "Nathan's ungrateful, a liar who used me!" she cried, accusing him of manipulating her into the marriage. Their public feud became a spectacle, each airing the other's flaws, Nathan's betrayal, Emily's ambition, like fighters in a digital arena. The backlash was swift. Once charmed by her miracle love story, Emily's followers turned on her, their comments vicious, liar, opportunist. Her account was banned for spreading falsehoods, and her influencer career was in ruins. She fled to the countryside, her dreams of sponsorships shattered, her jealousy-fueled victory over me reduced to ash. Nathan fared no better. Estranged from his mother after she refused to trade her years for his legs, he was alone, unable to afford proper care. His confession earned pity but no forgiveness. The public saw him as weak, a man who'd discarded a devoted partner for a fleeting fantasy. I followed the saga through news alerts, and Emily's status as a former classmate kept her downfall in my feed. I felt no joy, only a quiet satisfaction. Nathan's paralysis, a direct result of my choice, was justice, not vengeance. Aetherion's pact had cost me dearly, 5 years of my life, the physical toll of those traded years, but it had taught me my worth. The mutual acquaintances who'd mocked me at the villa, like Sarah, tried to reconnect, some even attending my departure, waving as I left for the airport. Sarah said, "You're stronger than any of us," her eyes sincere. I nodded, but their words echoed. My strength was mine, forged in solitude. As the plane soared, I thought of the art awaiting me. The sketches I'd made during those 5 years, smudged with pain, held a raw power my earlier work lacked. The $200,000 would fund my studies, a canvas for my rebirth. Nathan and Emily's destruction was their own making, their lies a house of cards I'd toppled with a single cut. I leaned back, the horizon stretching before me, and felt the stirrings of a new chapter. The past was behind me, its lessons carved into my soul, and I was ready to paint a future that was wholly mine. The Parisian sky stretched wide above the art university, its soft blues a canvas for my rebirth. The $200,000 from Nathan, once a bitter payoff for my 5 years of caregiving, had become my key to this moment, funding my enrollment in the program I'd abandoned for him. The red thread was gone, its divine pact with Aetherion severed, restoring the 30 years I'd traded to make Nathan walk. The physical toll, faint lines on my face, a dimmed vitality, had faded, my body renewed, but the lessons of those years remained, etched into my soul. As I stood in my dorm unpacking sketchbooks filled with the pain of my past, I felt free and whole. My journey to this point had been forged in fire. Nathan's betrayal, proposing to Emily, his first love in front of our friends, had shattered the illusion of our passion. Emily, driven by jealousy from our college days and ambition for her influencer status, had erased my role in Nathan's recovery, claiming she'd cared for him. I'd undone their triumph by cutting Aetherion's thread, reversing Nathan's miracle, and exposing their lies on a live stream. Their public downfall, Nathan's confession, Emily's ruined career, had been justice, but this new chapter truly defined my victory. Re-entering the art world wasn't easy. 5 years of caregiving had left my skills rusty, my portfolio a mix of hurried sketches from sleepless nights. The university's halls, filled with vibrant students, initially intimidated me, but my professors saw potential in the raw emotion of my work. One said that your early pieces were technically acceptable, studying a charcoal drawing of a fractured heart. But these, born of your hardship, have a soul. I threw myself into my studies, waking early to paint, my hands steady with purpose. The $200,000 covered tuition and supplies, but my resolve, honored by years of sacrifice, fueled my progress. The 30 years I'd nearly lost to Aetherion had taught me resilience. During those 5 years, I'd felt the Pact's weight, my energy sapped, my reflections subtly aged. As I cared for Nathan, guilt over his accident driving me. Cutting the thread had reclaimed my vitality, but the emotional scars remained, a reminder of my worth. I channeled them into my art, each stroke a defiance of the past. My classmates, initially distant, grew to admire my dedication, some asking about the stories behind my haunting canvases. I shared only fragments, the divine pact too surreal to explain, but their support became a new kind of community, replacing the friends who'd mocked me at the villa. My breakthrough came in my final year. Inspired by Aetherion's radiant form, I created Visions of the Divine, a series of paintings blending ethereal light with human pain. The works captured my journey, love, betrayal, reclamation, without revealing the supernatural truth. My professors urged me to exhibit, and with their help, I launched a show in a small Parisian gallery. The opening night buzzed with critics and locals, my canvases glowing under soft lights. These pieces speak, one critic wrote, of a soul forged in loss and reborn in strength. The exhibition went viral, shared across social media, sparking debates about art and resilience. I was a rising star, known in galleries from Paris to New York by graduation. Success was more than fame, redemption was. The 5 years I'd given Nathan had stolen my dreams, but they'd also shaped me. The sketches I'd made in stolen moments, smudged with exhaustion, held a truth my earlier work lacked. The 30 years I'd nearly sacrificed had taught me to value every moment, to paint with urgency and heart. As I stood in my gallery, surrounded by admirers, I thought of Nathan and Emily, their lives unraveled by their deceit. Mutual acquaintances, Sarah and others who'd apologized after the livestream, sent congratulations, but I kept them at a distance, their regret irrelevant to my new path. I walked to the Seine that evening, the river reflecting the city's lights. The girl who'd knelt by Nathan's bedside, consumed by guilt, was gone. In her place stood Jasmine Wu, artist, survivor, whole. Aetherian's pact, though costly, had been a crucible, burning away my naivety and forging my strength. The $200,000 had opened a door, but my talent and resolve had carried me through. I pulled a small sketchbook from my bag, drawing the river's shimmer, my lines bold and free. Life, I'd learned, was a series of endings and beginnings. When one door closed, another opened, and I walked through, my heart and canvas alight with possibility.